Decoding Learning Differences with Kimberlyn Lavelle, and this episode is Voting for Education. Now, don't get too worried. I'm not going to be talking about the presidential election or any of that. I just want to encourage you to look at your ballot, and if you haven't already, look at each item one more time in terms of what the impact is on education for each item. So not just the people. Are they supporting education? Are they supporting teachers? Teachers need to be well educated. They need to be paid well. They need to have time to plan and have breaks. They need, most teachers go into this for very pure reasons, and then they get burnt out because so much is piled on top of them without the resources and the ability to provide. Schools, the actual physical buildings are sometimes falling apart and they need funding to be repaired. The materials sent to the kids need to be good. So, and all of that does cost a lot of money, but it also, when we're looking at the people that are behind it, we want to make sure that they have priorities beyond just money, because sometimes the most expensive curriculum options or construction options are kind of a waste of money, right? Like I'm sure you've seen some government building or school or something, and you're like, that must have cost a fortune. I think they could have used their money better, right? Like there is that element. But then there's also the really dilapidated schools, or the schools that are nothing but the temporary buildings, the little portables or whatever you call them where you're at. They're not, and then, they've been there for 50 years, they're falling apart. They were never built for that. They were never intended for that. And yet we're asking kids to go to these buildings that feel depressing. So there's extremes there, right? We want to make sure that good decisions are being made, and that ideally we're looking for people who are getting input from the community, from the teachers who are in the classroom teaching the material. I loved the second special ed director I ever worked under, pulled all the special ed teachers in together with a whole bunch of curriculum options in the room, asked us to look through it. It was specifically an intervention curriculum that we were looking for, not a core curriculum. It was a reading intervention curriculum. And so we're looking at all these different materials, and we could give her feedback. Well, this one's going to take more time than I get to work with my students, so it's really not going to work for us. This one is much more easily adaptable. I could do it for this and this. So, and it hits all these points, and this other one doesn't. And so we're looking at all these, and we're giving her feedback, and we're voting. And she listened to us, and she bought the one that the majority of us were requesting. And even those who were against it initially told me later, like, oh, this is actually really good. Because we were listened to. So that's super important too, right? You want someone who is listening to the people who are actually doing the job. I don't know what you do for a living, but I know that in a lot of jobs, that's the frustration. Is like there's some boss somewhere telling their employees what to do as if they understand what it's like to do the thing, instead of asking the employees for the input on what's going to work well, right? The top down can be good and is necessary at times, but they also have to have some bottom up dialogue, some discussion where everyone's listening to everyone and really understanding. So that's what I'm looking for in especially school board candidates. I want to make sure that they value teachers and the input of teachers, as well as valuing the input of parents. And that I don't want anyone who has a chip on their shoulder either way, right? Like, I don't want someone who's in there being like, parents are never getting what they want and they need to be fully in control of every single aspect of every single thing, and teachers don't know anything. And I don't want someone in there saying teachers are always right 100% of the time. Parents don't really need to be acknowledged or listened to. We just have to tell the parents what is happening. And I really, really don't want someone who's in there like, I know everything I don't need to listen to any of you. I will tell you what your child needs that I've never met, right? So I'm really looking for that kind of thing, especially in like a school board member. But I'm also looking for a lot of other things. I'm looking for, in every candidate, what is their, do they value education in general? Is that somewhere on their platform? To what degree is it on there? Do they value families? Do they value education? Do they value the teachers? Like I've said, like all of that. There's also a lot of times propositions and measures that might impact the funding of schools. And like I said before, we want to make sure the money is used well, but we also have to have the money there to use, because a high quality education is expensive. Teachers deserve to be paid a living wage minimum. And really, they deserve to be paid very well, because what they're doing is so important for the future of our country, for the future of our children. Like, it's so critical. So we really want to make sure that we are fully funding education, fully funding every aspect of education, and doing so in responsible ways. So some things to think about. If there's stuff on there like, it's going to raise my taxes. Is it much though? Is it much? Because having a well-educated population is important. Also, having good schools can raise your property values, so maybe that's a payoff. Just some things to think about. Happy election cycle? No, I don't think anyone's enjoying this, but I hope you have a happy Halloween and make some informed decisions.